The Doctor. In the TARDIS. Next stop, everywhere.
Hello, everyone. Welcome back to Next Stop Everywhere, the Doctor Who podcast. I'm Charles Skaggs, your host here in the TARDIS, ready to talk some more Doctor Who, this time classic Doctor Who, with returning special guest companion. Welcome back, John Takacs. Welcome back to Next Stop Everywhere.
Thanks a lot, Charles. Thanks for having me back again.
Oh, it was great. Great to have you back. For those who foolishly aren't aware of this already, John previously joined us to talk The Seeds of Doom, classic Tom Baker story here not too long ago, a couple months ago. And he's back this time to talk the previous episode, The Brain of Morbius.
Yeah, it's a season 13 thing for me.
Yeah, I kind of noticed the trend while I was kind of scheduling the episodes. I'm like, isn't Brain of Morbius the previous one, the one we just talked about with John?
Yeah, it is. It is.
So that's all right.
I think
that's okay. Tom Baker's
for
your
the
thing.
future, I'd like to maybe do a William Hartnell one in the future.
Oh, that would be great. Yeah, that would be great. So yeah, we definitely will have you back because
sounds good.
Yeah, it's not very often I get to talk with William Hartnell era, so definitely all for that. So yeah, here at episode 142, we're going to talk The Brain of Morbius, written by Robin Bland, and yes, that is a pseudonym. Essentially, it was Terrence Dicks, written by Robert Holmes, and we'll get into that a little bit.
Yeah, there's a lot of history with that.
There's a lot of history with that. I have some trivia, and I think you probably have probably the same notes. And this was the fifth serial of season 13 that aired in 1976, starring Tom Baker as the Fourth Doctor, of course, and Elisabeth Sladen as everybody's favorite companion, Sarah Jane Smith.
Mm-hmm.
And it's definitely considered to be one of the classics of the modern era, or excuse me, the classic era. And it's a very odd episode, though. And I can't wait to talk about this with you. So, So before we get into that, though, John, what have you been up to the past couple months?
Oh, past couple months, just I got thanks to the exposure the first time.
Yeah.
We've got a few more likes on the Ohio Type 40 Facebook page.
Excellent. Always glad to help that out.
No, it's great. I not a whole lot of social media on my end, but I do keep up with the Facebook page a lot. And I was pleasantly surprised to hear on the episode Dalek that you had a new fan right in from North Canton, which is right next door to Maslin over here. So
yeah, exactly. Yeah, right by obviously the up there at the Pro Football Hall of Fame area.
Exactly.
And I used to live up in Medina, so that's pretty close to my neck of the woods back in the day.
Gotcha.
So yeah,
so that fan can hit up the Ohio Type 40 and give you another like there.
Exactly. I was like the more Ohio representation, the better, as far as I'm concerned. Buckeye State showing up, so I'm always glad. Well,
we've got four different large Doctor Who groups in Ohio. You got the Doctor Who Society of Cleveland, you've got the Ohio Type 40, of course, Doctor Who Columbus, and the Friends of the Time Lord down in Cincinnati.
Oh, that's awesome. So, and always glad to, like I said, always help support Ohio Type 40. So,
Appreciate it.
Very cool. And, so while we were back on the subject of Robin Bland, might as well talk about this right off the bat here in a little trivia section. Mm-hmm. So, as I'm guessing you probably are aware, the original script was written by Terrence Dicks using some ideas from his script of the Doctor Who stage play, Doctor Who and the Daleks in the Seven Keys to Doomsday, a really long
Right.
title.
Yep.
And apparently that got reworked. So do you have any notes of your own? I mean, I know what I've got, but I'm kind of curious about what you've got on this.
Yeah, the initial idea that Terrence Dicks came up with was that, I mean, Morbius was at war with the Time Lords, and this was towards the end of it. He was on his last regeneration, and he crash lands on the planet Karn. Now, he has a little robot servant with him that never made it to the show. That was one of the rewrites.
Right.
And the only thing that survived was his brain. His body was just destroyed. So the little robot goes through Karn and takes bits and pieces off of dead bodies, and that's what ended up becoming Morbius's body, was all the pieces that he came up with.
Right.
Well, when Dick submitted that script, he went on vacation, came back, and Hinchcliffe said, "You know what? We can't do the robot. It's way too over budget. We're going to switch it to a mad scientist and an Igor type servant."
Right.
And
that's showrunner Philip Hinchcliffe, by the way.
Right.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
So after that, he read the script. He said, "You know what? I don't like it. I don't want my name on it." He said, "Just put some." They were like, "Well, who are we gonna put as the writer?" He said, "We'll put some bland pseudonym."
Right.
So that turned into Robin Bland after all the Robert Holmes rewrites.
Right.
Which, yeah, it's a fun story.
Yeah, it's kind of interesting that they tried to contact Terrence Dicks for this, but supposedly, and for some reason that I don't think has come out, at least not to my knowledge, that we don't know why they couldn't get a hold of him. What was exactly? I mean, we know he was traveling, but maybe he was just like between destinations or what have you. So maybe they just couldn't get an actual. I mean, because obviously this is way before cell phones, so probably just maybe he just didn't have any direct line of communication at the time while he's traveling.
Right, and these are some huge differences to his original script.
Yes, they are. They're major rewrites, and yeah, apparently he was seriously pissed off about this.
Right.
He calls up Robert Holmes, just lays him out, and obviously that's what led to the pseudonym. And also I have here that apparently that robot character was, essentially Solon, Dr. Solon, was substituted for the robot.
Right.
In this one.
Mm-hmm.
And then obviously, we talked about that they reworked it so that, he just had a different motivation of the mad scientist, though, so we got that.
Mm-hmm.
All right. But yeah, very intriguing little trivia tidbit and a little behind-the-scenes drama, obviously.
Mm-hmm.
And if you notice, there's that's happened a few times on Doctor Who where they have these pseudonyms, and for one reason or another, usually rewrites, they end up coming up with these, the original writer has a problem with it, and they have to come up with some pseudonym because they just don't want their name associated with it for whatever reason.
Right. They just feel it's not their work anymore.
Right. Exactly. And as a writer, I respect that. So I personally get it. Okay. So guest cast. Did you have any other trivia before we head into our guest cast? I should say.
No, I can add to it to the as we go on.
Okay. Great. All right. So guest cast, of course, we have the great Philip Madoc as Mehendri Solon, and he's had a lot of association with various eras of Doctor Who.
Mm-hmm.
I've got here that he was Elec in the Crotons, a Patrick Troughton story. The Warlord. He got a really big role as the Warlord in the War Games, Patrick Troughton's final story. So that was a big deal, and a lot of people probably remember him from that. Fenner in The Power of Crawl, the notorious episode from the Key to Time season.
Right.
And he also played Broccoli in the Peter Cushing movie, Daleks Invasion of Earth 2150 AD.
Right.
So it's one of the few actors that's actually acted on the Doctor Who TV series and in the Doctor Who movie. the Peter Cushing movies. He also played a character named Rag Cobden in the Sixth Doctor Big Finish audio adventure, Return of the Crotons. So it's kind of interesting that he was associated with another Croton story. And he's notably for playing Victor Schaefer in the Sylvester McCoy era, Seventh Doctor Big Finish audio Master, which is a personal favorite of mine. I really like that story.
Yeah, that is a good one.
Yeah, and so I thought that's kind of interesting. And one of a great recurring actors on classic Doctor Who, and also it's nice that he was able to do something for Big Finish in the modern era, which is great.
Yeah, he did quite a bit before we lost him in 2012.
Yeah, it was definitely a loss. So,
yeah, he was a big fan.
It would have been nice if we had got him at least a small role in the modern era.
Yeah, just even if it was just a cameo,
exactly.
Just to say thank you to the fans.
Exactly, but sadly that wasn't to be. But we also had Michael Spice as the voice of Morbius, and you may remember we've talked about this not too long ago. He played the character Magnus Greel in The Talons of Wang Chiang, the controversial Tom Baker era story. And so I thought that was interesting. We had Cynthia Grenville as Marin, and Gilly Brown as Ohika, which I always kind of wonder, is she an ancestor of Ohila from the modern era?
I tried to look that up. I just wanted to make sure.
I don't think there's a direct connection, but it would be kind of cool if they
different spellings.
Exactly. So just obviously similar names and. Just probably just very coincidental, but it would be kind of cool if it was an ancestor somehow. I'm not sure how they could do it, considering all the Sisterhood are women.
Right.
But hey, you've got that elixir of life, and life finds a way. If you remember Jurassic Park. So, all right. Anything else about the guest cast before we move on to our main topics?
Some of the choices that they made before Philip Madoc included Peter Cushing and Vincent Price.
Oh, I wasn't aware of that.
Yeah, that's they mentioned that on the DVD extra. If you watch that, it's called Getting Ahead.
Yes.
Awesome behind the scenes. They mentioned that, and I was just like, I wonder just how it would have been if either of those two actors would have had that role apart from Philip Madoc. But
Vincent Price, obviously. I think everybody and their brother would love to have seen Vincent Price on Doctor Who.
Oh, yeah, at least once.
I mean, I think he was under consideration for one of the Doctors at some point, if I'm not mistaken.
I think so.
I want to say Tom Baker, the Fourth Doctor, if I'm not mistaken. I could be wrong though. But yeah, obviously he would have been fantastic, especially if he was a villain and someone, especially like Solon. He would have been fantastic for that. Obviously, the mad scientist. That'd be right up his alley. Very classic horror in a way, and that's one of the great things about this story is like if you're a fan of classic horror, maybe more in I want to say like maybe a Hammer horror type setting, or just or maybe even just this story in particular is obviously heavily influenced by Frankenstein, the Mary Shelley classic, and obviously the movies, and it does have this kind of classic horror feel, and the production is the way this is shot and lit. It kind of has that old classic Universal movie type vibe to it.
Yeah, that's that was season 13 in a nutshell, basically. Yeah, that whole gothic horror type feel. And Barry Newberry, when he was tasked on designing everything for the episode, Barry Letts told him to look at some of the work of Antonio Gaudi. And if you look up some of his work online, there's a lot of similarities. So it does have that gothic type look.
Probably heavily inspired by the movies of that genre, I think, and it shows, and it pays off. And that's probably one of the reasons why this story is so fondly remembered by classic era fans. All right, let's go into main topics. Topic number one, of course, the Fourth Doctor and Sarah Jane.
Mm-hmm.
And the Fourth Doctor essentially kind of gets brought by the Time Lords. They kind of intentionally divert him to the planet Karn.
Which he does not like at all.
No, he's never fond of being manipulated by the Time Lords, and it's one of the few times the Fourth Doctor is intentionally maneuvered like this. And Sarah, obviously, she has her big storyline as because she ends up getting blinded about an episode in for a couple of episodes, and she kind of stumbles around, and that's kind of like her little character showcase. So I want to get your thoughts on the Fourth Doctor and obviously Elisabeth Sladen as Sarah Jane in this episode, in this story.
Well, yeah, when they arrive, I mean, the first thing he does is start going off about you took control of the TARDIS or whatever, and
right.
This is not where I want to go. Sarah could care less. She wants to investigate.
Yeah.
And,
the Doctor's almost like he has this kind of little tantrum about it.
Mm-hmm. And that goes on for a while until she becomes she gets put into danger.
Right.
She screams. And
she finds this headless body.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
And then there's like, oh yeah, maybe now you're interested.
Right. Exactly. And I like the fact that they used one of the mutants, because that was 4 years before this story.
Right.
It's like, okay, they dusted off one of the old props, but or costumes rather. But yeah, it seemed like he had his own agenda that he was. I'm not going to do anything. I'm just going to sit here, and you know what? If they want to use me, they can just sit and wait for me.
Yeah, this is another great example of the Doctor's just sheer contempt for the authority of the Time Lords.
Mm-hmm.
His rebellious nature coming through, just hating to be manipulated, especially after everything they did, putting him in, forcing a regeneration on him, putting him into exile, and now that he's off wandering the universe again, they do this. They still are messing with his life.
Mm-hmm. But I mean, Sarah, I love Sarah in this episode because she's quirky, she's bubbly. Right. I mean, she's making sound effects at the Doctor, just like kind of mocking him. Say, okay, well, I'm going to go shooting raspberries at him. I'm going to do this, and if you want to come find me, go ahead. But yeah, she was really fun, and she did a nice job when she was blinded.
Right.
It was believable.
Yeah.
And I don't know if like during rehearsals if she actually closed her eyes or anything. That's one of the rumors, but yeah, she did a really nice job when it happened.
She gets blinded by the beam off of Marin's ring.
Right.
And Solon initially tells her that, or is telling her that the condition's permanent, and so, or at least tells the Doctor this, and unaware to both of them, obviously he's lying.
Yeah.
And
just
her sight does eventually return on its own.
Mm-hmm.
But the Doctor, of course, is desperate to try to find a cure, and he's willing to try to go to the Sisterhood and get their elixir of life. So what did you think of the Doctor's desire for this, like wanting to help Sarah? Just that he didn't seem very at all interested in the elixir until Sarah's blindness.
And that was it. That was just him looking out for one of his friends.
Right. And
he believed Solon.
Right. And I have to wonder why,
mm-hmm.
especially when it wasn't too much earlier in the episode that, and there's this great scene I love that's with Tom Baker and Elisabeth Sladen here, where Solon is pouring them a drink. And the Doctor goes ahead and drinks it. Sarah takes maybe a sip, and then, when she gets an opportune moment, she tosses the rest off to the side.
Right, she just kind of dumps it right next to her.
So essentially, Sarah is actually being more savvy and aware and smart,
mm-hmm.
smarter than the Doctor, really, at that moment. I thought I was kind of wondering, well, okay, is it just the Doctor being arrogant, that he's counting on his Time Lord physiognomy to not, like he couldn't be poisoned, or he was just being careless, in your
I
opinion?
think he was also kind of enamored that he's meeting one of these top surgeons.
Right.
He obviously knew the title of the book that he published, so I'm sure he was trusting at that point in time.
Okay, so he wasn't just being naturally so you think maybe just that Sarah's natural suspicious nature as a reporter probably helped her out in that scenario?
Probably.
Yeah, I think so too.
Plus, strangers giving you green drinks. I don't know.
Right, exactly. So yeah, I have to give Sarah points on that one.
Mm-hmm.
Doctor, no points. Sorry, but the doctor is essentially, because after being drugged, he learns that Solon is looking to essentially decapitate him.
Right.
And use his head as, ultimately, as we find out later, as a replacement head on this kind of patchwork creature. And obviously the doctor's very attached to his head, understandably so. And there's a lot of good head gags as a result of this. And then the doctor, of course, later gets brought before the Sisterhood of Karn. And so what did you think of the Fourth Doctor? And we'll talk about the Sisterhood, obviously, a little later. But what did you think about the way the Fourth Doctor interacted with the Sisterhood?
He seemed like he was kind of leery of them.
Right.
Obviously he told them that the Time Lords and the Sisterhood have worked together.
Right.
He wasn't there to try to steal the elixir. They said they've used it in the past to help to regenerate a body if there was a problem during regeneration. But he just he had no problem going in.
Yeah.
But he just seemed to be very cautious when he was there.
Yeah, I mean, I think maybe he just realized that there's bad blood between the Sisterhood and the Time Lords. So maybe he just was probably trying to play it delicately with them. That he figured there would be this animosity toward him.
Right, and since he's basically a pawn of the Time Lords right now,
right, and
he's got to be careful what he does.
Right, and even though he's saying, "Look, I don't work for the Time Lords," even though they think I do, and but the Sisterhood doesn't obviously seem to buy that very often. That whole attitude.
Yeah, they're very standoffish.
They're very distrustful, and we'll talk about that more, obviously. Let's see here. I had, the notes that, what is it here? I'm blanking on what I was going to talk about here. Forgive me. I'm looking through my notes here and I'm trying to figure out where I left off. So, the doctor, one of the other scenes that I like with the doctor here, that was that where he's coming up essentially with a cyanide gas. And, he gets locked in this lab, and he's cobbling together all these various chemicals, and he comes up with this, what he calls cyanogen. And he's using this, and he pipes it through a vent. And there was a great scene, I thought, that where Sarah's looking at the vent going, like, "You're not going to make me climb up that vent, are you?"
Right.
Which I thought was rather funny. And he's like, no. And he kills Solon with the cyanogen gas.
And that was rough at that time because the doctor doesn't kill people.
Right.
And unless the only other time I can remember off the top of my head is two doctors.
Right.
But yeah, that raised a few eyebrows.
Yeah, I'm sure. But he did. I mean, he does throughout the course of the episode try to essentially bring Solon around. But Solon is just way too out there.
Yeah.
And so maybe the doctor, I don't know, just realized that this was the only move he had. Do you think it was just that more of like he felt like it was put into a corner, and then that was his only way to take care of Solon?
Well, the funny thing is, and this is one of the, I mean, it's a fun story, but it's not a perfect story.
Right, obviously.
If it kills Solon,
right,
who's going to let him out if Morbius doesn't make it?
Exactly. Yeah, it's like, well, yeah, if everybody's dead, and
is Kondo eventually going to come downstairs looking for a popsicle and let him out?
The only thing I could think of is that maybe they were thinking that he was thinking that the Sisterhood could find him eventually
and teleport him out.
Right.
Right.
That's the only thing I could think of. But I did find it was interesting that, like, oh, hey, the Doctor just killed Solon. What's up with that?
Mm-hmm.
And then, of course, we had the Doctor engaging in that mind-bending contest with Morbius.
That's controversial, too.
That is obviously very controversial because we kind of see various incarnations of the Doctor, or at least that's what it's presented that way.
We're led to believe that.
We're led to believe that. Now, so my question to you is, do you think those are previous incarnations of the Doctor or something else?
I think they're previous incarnations of Morbius, and I think, if I'm not mistaken, I think it's become canonized that's what it was.
Oh, okay.
I think so.
I wasn't aware of that.
But if you look closely, when you get to the face of Philip Hinchcliffe,
right,
sure looks a lot like Roger Daltrey.
Yeah. Yeah, because some of the I think some of the crew were featured in those faces, if I'm not mistaken.
And they got in trouble for that.
Right.
Because they're not actors.
Right.
So they actually had to pay, I think it was like a donation to the Actors Guild.
Yeah, so there's obviously the union or the guild, essentially.
Yep.
And but yeah, I thought that was rather interesting that some of these. Now, I kind of agree with you. I don't think they're either Morbius's previous incarnations kind of mixed in with the Doctor's, or at least presented that way. Because in that kind of, it's making it more of a back and forth between Morbius and the Doctor as far as the way that the battle was going.
Yeah.
Also, I kind of wonder if that's just the Doctor's kind of maybe people that the Doctor has encountered. So I'm kind of wondering if it it seems, I think, the more likely explanation is, previous incarnations of Morbius. But I always kind of wondered, well, maybe it's just that, they're people that the Doctor has encountered throughout his travels up to that point. Mm-hmm. And that maybe they kind of flash into his mind and we see them at that particular moment.
But like in Terrence Dicks' original script, Morbius was on his last regeneration. So that could have been previous incarnations.
Oh, and I agree. Yeah, I think previous incarnations of Morbius is the most likely explanation, and that's certainly an easy way to get around it. But yeah, that had to be confusing back in 1976.
Oh, sure.
Because as far as the audience knew, well, hey, there's only 4 Doctors. We've only seen 4 Doctors. Who are these guys?
Yeah. And you see the clay model in there too as his last incarnation.
Right.
And then it goes to I think a couple of different shots of back and forth, and you see these other guys. Now, apparently, one of the bloopers in this one is that during the whole mind-bending battle, Elisabeth Sladen accidentally says Tom. And I think I've heard it once. I'd have to go back.
I haven't heard that, but I'm not gonna.
Yeah, but she's making noises behind her. She's like,
yeah,
Tom, and I was like, okay, that's fun.
You would think they would have at least edited that out. Well, maybe not for historical purposes.
Oh,
I'm trying, like if there was a special edition version, and that maybe they would have edited.
At least
that
it's not
out.
A Starbucks cup.
That's true, or a water bottle.
Well, funny you say that with the special edition.
Right.
When this was released on, it came out on Betamax, VHS, Laserdisc, which I'd love to have. I'd love to find the Laserdisc copy of it. In 1984, there was an unedited omnibus edition.
Right.
And then they came out with the collector's edition back in 1997, and yeah, it was when I first remember watching it on PBS. The whole time when the doors blow open and the chandelier falls,
right?
There was no music, no sound effects,
right?
And I still have it on VHS from like recording it off of PBS years ago. But yeah, that's been
hasn't been on an official release,
right?
So maybe it'll turn up on the. I know obviously they're in the process of releasing season sets on Blu-ray now.
Right.
So maybe eventually when they get down to around to a season 13 set, maybe we'll see that.
Yeah, because
Right.
I've got the
Fingers
I've got
crossed,
both
right?
of them. So yeah, it's one of those things where it's like, okay, I'm waiting for season 13 on Blu-ray, so
Yeah,
I'll be the first in line for that one.
right. Yeah. After obviously, like I'm one of those people that collected every Doctor Who DVD. So I had all these DVDs, and now I'm in the process. Okay, they're releasing the Blu-ray sets finally. So
Hmm.
so so now my space for Doctor Who is obviously shrinking because of the more slimmer sets, season sets.
Yeah.
But the question is, what do I do with those original DVDs? So I just put like I'm like I don't want to throw them away. I don't want to get rid of them, but I know I'll probably just be watching the Blu-rays. So maybe I'll archive them or something.
Well, when you want to get rid of them, you have my email. Because I'm not paying $250 for Planet of Spiders.
Oh, is that what it's up to now?
That's what it's up to because
Wow.
they're out of print. Yeah.
Yeah, I know. I know a lot of them are out of print. So,
Yeah.
but I guess I need to check eBay and see what they're going. But but
But
yeah,
we digress.
I'm very fortunate. Yeah, because I bought them as each one was released. So,
Okay.
So I've got them all. So I'm very happy about that.
Yeah, I've got a few gaps.
But anyway. All right, I know that's enough digression. Do you have anything else about the Fourth Doctor and Sarah Jane before we move on?
No.
All right, so let's move on to topic number 2, and this is where we get to talk about the villains, Dr. Solon and Kondo, and which always cracks me up because I live in a condo, so every time he said Kondo's name, I was just like, okay, he's a condominium. Okay, well, he's kind of big enough to be a condominium, and of course Morbius. So let's talk about these three. Obviously, essentially, Solon and Kondo are your typical Victor Frankenstein. I always say Frankenstein because I'm a big young Frankenstein fan.
Right.
So yeah,
Nothing wrong with that.
Victor Frankenstein and Igor
Mm-hmm.
archetypes, and Morbius obviously is essentially the Frankenstein's monster in this.
Mm-hmm.
And although I gotta think that in the original movies they probably were a lot happier that they didn't go with a fishbowl head, like they did in Brain of Morbius, I'm guessing. But anyway, so yeah, let's talk about these three. Obviously, the like I said, the Frankenstein metaphors are hard and strong in this one. And so what did you think about Doctor Who's essential take on like a version of this literary classic?
Well, Robert Holmes liked to incorporate a lot of the classics in his writing, and this was no different. I can tell you, at the age of 14, when I first saw it, I thought completely different about it now that I'm 47, and it's just like, okay, well, you've got Kondo. Why didn't you just put the brain into Kondo's head?
Right.
And when you look at Kondo, what's wrong with that arm?
Let's keep in mind though that Solon was nuts. He wasn't thinking logically.
Yeah, I'll give you that one.
Because, I mean, if you think about the creature that he created,
Mm-hmm.
this patchwork creature that, okay, he took Kondo's left arm, didn't take any other body parts, just the arm, because hey, this creature's great. I just need a left arm. And then Kondo finally makes this connection throughout the course of the story that, he finally sees the creature, although why now and not like, I'm sure he's been around as Solon's been creating this thing, crafting and stitching it together. So I don't know why all of a sudden he connects the dots and goes, hey, that's my arm. Why you take my arm?
So long.
Yeah.
Exactly.
And and then obviously that's the big impetus for him rebelling against his master Solon.
Mm-hmm. Kondo was tough, though. He was tough. He took 3 shots to the chest.
This is
And
true.
still survived to fight Morbius.
He's too dumb to die, apparently.
Pretty much.
But poor Kondo. He did. He also had, and just like a little bit of Frankenstein from the classic movies, he kind of has a fondness for Sarah Jane. You know, and if you notice, if you remember, that there was a blind girl in the Frankenstein movie, and essentially that's what Sarah Jane is here.
Right.
And it's basically resetting that. Which
thankfully, he didn't throw her into a lake.
Yes, exactly. Like in Young Frankenstein, yeah.
Right.
Or or was it she ended up on the top of a windmill or something? I forget what it was. Or no, she landed in her bed. That's right. He throws her, and she ends up in her bedroom, and the parents sigh with relief in Young Frankenstein. Yeah, that was great.
And in the original Frankenstein, he throws a little girl into the water and
right, yeah, she drowns. Yeah.
Yep. So, good thing they were on a mountain.
Yeah. Not so good for Morbius, as it turns out.
Right.
Because
but Solon was very character driven too, and he had his agenda. Right. He was obviously knew Morbius before he was killed by the Time Lords, before he was executed.
Right. Yeah. He talked about it. Yeah, he was part of this. There was essentially like a cult of Morbius, and Solon belonged to this, and it's probably one of the reasons why he got away from being a respected scientist, because he just saw it buying into this whole cult, these beliefs, and he just became obsessed with it.
Yeah, he became the ultimate fanboy.
Exactly. Mm-hmm. And as a result, he became obsessed with bringing Morbius back. I would have liked a little more backstory as to exactly how Solon and Morbius met.
Mm-hmm.
Or at least how those two were like. How is Morbius in a position? We know that when we're introduced to Morbius, he's essentially a brain in a jar.
Right.
But we don't really get the backstory of, okay, how did these two crazy kids hook up? And and what got? Is it just maybe somehow at some point maybe that Morbius? And I haven't read the novelization, so I'm not sure if there was any backstory provided in the Target novelization.
Not sure.
But I kind of would like to know, like, okay, you were maybe it's just that Solon knew someone who had preserved Morbius, and together they conspired. Well, hey, I just so happens I'm a scientist. I'll bring Morbius back.
Mm-hmm.
And so he retreated to Karn and essentially set up shop.
And Morbius was one of the higher ups too, because at one point in time he says that he led the High Council.
Yeah, exactly. So presumably
that leads me to believe Lord President.
Yeah, that's what I would think. Yeah. So and then I want to say that he obviously fell out of favor, and I'm guessing went into exile. And it would have been kind of interesting if Barusa was like a protege of Morbius,
kind of like an acolyte.
An acolyte, yeah, that'd be that would have kind of make sense if you watch the Five Doctors about why Barusa turned out the way he did, because maybe he was obviously part of that same insane Morbius cult. I just come up with these ideas. Sorry.
No,
part of me just goes like, oh, wouldn't it be great if we could connect this to this? But
Titan Comics has some work to do.
I would love to write for Titans Comics. Published comic book writer, just saying.
There you go.
What did you think of? You talked a little bit about that Solon was prepared for when the Doctor and Sarah Jane arrived, or at least like he had a plan. So, do you think he was just lying in wait and hoping that somebody would show up, or do you think that he just like came up with this like, okay, this is what I'm going to do. I'm going to, I'm going to drug them. I'm going to cut off his head, and that'll be that.
Well, I think that being a member of the cult of Morbius, he probably had to get out of town pretty quick.
Right.
And with Karn having that belt of magnetic radiation that pulls ships in,
Right.
he probably crash landed too. And then set up shop there, and just in the hopes that somebody else would come down and.
That makes sense. Now, obviously, he's got. Apparently, we get the kind of vibe that Solon has some history with the Sisterhood.
Mm-hmm.
They know of each other.
He's treated them too.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, I was just going to say that. Yeah, it's explained that for whatever reasons, maybe one of the Sisterhood was injured or what have you, and Solon, having some knowledge in that area. Was able to at least assist them, but obviously the Sisterhood not really trusting him. They're kind of like, well, okay, we know he's out there, but he's not really harming us, so we'll just kind of let him do his thing.
Yeah, even Ohika says his unnatural experiments.
Right.
So I think they only go to him in like a last-ditch effort.
Right, whether they absolutely have to. I mean,
right.
Yeah, they obviously seem like they want to keep to themselves. But
Solon and Kondo, they were just the perfect comedy duo for Doctor Who. I mean, Solon is.
They need their own Big Finish audio.
Right. As much as I
Solon and Kondo.
Right. As much as I don't like bullying.
Right.
His bullying to Kondo is actually pretty funny.
Right.
And there's a quote I got later, but it's just like Kondo he takes it. He just, okay, I'll do this, and he's being insulted by Solon left and right, but he still takes care of him and does what he says because he wants that arm back.
Right, and that's the kind of thing is like Kondo actually stands up to Morbius a couple times, but like you said, because he's so focused on getting his arm back, he agrees, he goes along with it. Whatever Solon wants,
right. Mm-hmm.
And it's only that when I think he sees his arm on the creature that he realizes, hey, he's never going to give me my arm back.
Yep, that's when the penny drops.
And that's kind of the tipping point.
Mm-hmm.
What did you think of that moment?
I really enjoyed it. Because, like you said, there's so many times he could have found that arm,
right?
But luckily, he found it for us,
right?
And when he realizes that's his, he just the switch gets flipped, and he goes after him.
Right. So I have to know this. Obviously, I'm gathering you've watched this story quite a number of times.
Mm-hmm.
All right. So the very first time you watched this, and Morbius came out as fishbowl head creature. With a human arm, lumbering around with those kind of big eye stalks on the fishbowl. What did you make of that? What was your reaction to that?
Well, like I said, I was probably 14 or 15 the first time I saw it.
Right.
I loved it.
So you thought it was kind of cool?
I thought it was the coolest thing ever. I wanted to make a huge claw arm for Halloween that year.
Right.
I loved it at the time, but. Like I said, the difference between now and then. Right.
So all right. Yeah. So that was your 14-year-old perspective. What's your older perspective on this?
Like I said earlier, he could have put the brain in Kondo's head. And when he wants to take off the doctor's head, just take out the doctor's brain.
Right.
And just swap it. It's like I said, it's not a perfect story, but it's fun.
Yeah, exactly.
And it's fun to talk about stuff like that too.
But again, my explanation is that hey, Solon's nuts. So obviously he's not really thinking all this through like he should be.
But think of that body with Tom Baker's head.
But he's great at parties. So.
Yeah. Probably brings a banana.
Yeah, just don't let him bring the wine. Just saying. Just a little safety tip, kids. He gets all Bill Cosby on everybody.
Mm-hmm.
All right. Anything else about these characters, Solon, Kondo, and Morbius?
We finally got some blood on Doctor Who.
Yeah.
Yeah. When he hits Kondo in the chest with that.
That's right. Yeah, we do.
Yeah, he.
I'm sure.
Nice splatter.
Mary Whitehouse had the vapors watching that.
Between that and the cyanide gas, she went nuts.
Yeah, for those who aren't aware of what I'm talking about, Mary Whitehouse was this rather problematic figure, that caused the series some grief back in the 70s because of what she felt was excessive violence and horror, and basically wanted to take all the fun out of Doctor Who.
Mm-hmm.
There's always one out there, and so she's kind of become a notorious figure for classic era fans.
Well, the funny thing is, John Nathan Turner, in an interview, he said that, you know what, if Mary Whitehouse finds a problem with it and starts going on about it, I just got 2 more ratings points the next week. Because everyone wants to see what's going on.
Right. Oh, I see what you're saying. Yeah, because of the controversy. Yes, exactly. Yep. Controversy does sell, or in this case, get ratings. So, yep. But yeah, just one of those things.
But the final battle between Kondo and Morbius, I just thought it was ironic that Kondo gets caught with his own arm.
Right.
When he's wrestling with Morbius, but. I just
one thing I want to ask you about. All right, so Morbius, ultimately in his conclusion, he gets cornered by the Sisterhood. They finally get around to, like, the Doctor kind of convinces them, like, oh, okay, we have to do something about this, about Morbius, and so essentially the Sisterhood get their pitchforks. So again, more Frankenstein parallels.
Right.
That they're essentially the angry townspeople going after the monster, and they corner Morbius and essentially corner him to fall back off of a cliff side, off the mountain, and he plummets to his death. And we actually get to see him falling, which was great. And I thought it was funny because here's Sarah. She spends like episodes 2 and 3 essentially getting out of the castle, fumbling around on the cliffside, doesn't kill herself somehow, even though she probably came close a couple times. And here's Morbius, Mr. Super Intelligent person, allowing himself to get cornered by women with pitchforks, with torches, and ends up having an untimely end by falling off a cliff.
Well, I think it was just the sheer number of them. He was by himself.
He was cornered and just got outmaneuvered.
He was cornered. They wanted nothing to do with going after him until he killed the one sister, Kelia.
Yes.
And then that's when they really started to say, okay, we have to help the Doctor.
Right.
But yeah, they're coming at him with torches. Anybody's gonna back away from that.
All right. Anything else about these characters before we move on?
No, I think we got it.
All right, so while on the topic of the Sisterhood, so let's talk about the Sisterhood of Karn. Now, this I thought was really, especially now, after being brought back in the modern era, I find their introduction here to be really interesting. It's kind of like the little nice little tidbit of Time Lord history, because we can't get enough of Time Lord history.
Right.
And so essentially they're presented as this kind of offshoot. We're not quite sure if they were originally on Gallifrey and then moved to Karn, or they just happened to know of the Time Lords, had encountered them before, but at some point they had a falling out. And as a result, the Sisterhood went into seclusion on Karn, became very distrustful, obviously very distrustful of the Time Lords, so that when the Doctor shows up, it kind of presents a problem for him, because obviously they don't trust him, especially once they figure out, well, hey, he's a Time Lord. And and hey, he's got a TARDIS, and they think he's here to steal our elixir of life.
Right.
So what did you think about the introduction to this very interesting addition to the Doctor Who mythos?
Well, when I was younger, I used to call them the facts of life in space, because there's the whole female cast with the headmaster.
Right.
But I'd like to believe that they did work closer with the Time Lords before all this happened.
So essentially, Marin's like Mrs. Garrett, I'm guessing.
Yeah, there you go. And guys our age will know that. So
yeah, exactly. Yeah, that's kind of dating us a little bit.
That's okay.
I'm guessing that Ohika is Blair, and I'm not sure which one Tootie is, but
But I really like the correlation.
yeah,
And bringing them back in the modern era is just a Gallifrey's got to be close to Karn.
right.
Like
It's got to be in the maybe like
at
same
least in the
solar
same
system. Yeah, something like that.
But yeah, something must have happened where
At least near the constellation of Kasterborous.
right.
Yes.
And something happened. Something must have happened in the past where even before Morbius and his army came to Karn, I don't know if maybe they encountered another Time Lord that tried to steal the elixir or whatever. But yeah,
Right.
they're just very defensive and very standoffish.
Well, especially since we're told at the beginning that they're running out of the elixir of life,
Right.
and they're not quite sure how to not quite sure what to do about it until the doctor comes over and essentially throws a firecracker down there
Mm-hmm.
and clears out the soot, as he says,
Right.
out of the chimney,
Mm-hmm.
and allows the flame to kind of get more oxygen and presumably become a stronger flame. So,
Which he said that. I want to say that he saved them because
right.
if they just let that go and go,
Right.
the whole mountain could have exploded.
Yeah, and obviously because they're obviously not very heavily technologically advanced, or at least
No.
at least they don't rely on a lot of technology. It's
Mm-hmm.
more obviously a religious cast.
Religious and telekinetic.
Right, exactly. Yeah, so very very psychically enhanced.
Mm-hmm.
And because they do have these they're obviously able to transport objects with their mind. Now that you bring this up. And I found that to be rather interesting. So obviously, kind of like the Time Lords, they have vast mental powers, which kind of makes me wonder again, like, are these two related somehow? Are they
Mm-hmm.
again? Are they an offshoot of the Time Lords that just essentially broke away
Right.
and then became their own order, or is it just coincidental that maybe they're like that? But
Could be either or.
yeah, but either way, I find them intriguing, and I want to know more about them.
Mm-hmm. I'm glad they brought them back from the new series.
Exactly. Yeah. I mean, they have this. Yeah. It shows a lot of potential, and I'm hoping that continues. That hopefully we'll see them again, because I do want to know more about them. But I thought they were rather interesting, and the kind of character arc that they kind of go through in the story is that Marin, the older leader of the Sisterhood, has to be kind of convinced that, and is kind of convinced by the Doctor that because they're essentially immortal, their lives don't change; they keep remaining constant.
She must have been old when the elixir was found. Yeah.
Exactly, and. And it's at the end of the story where Marin gives up the elixir of life and gives it up selflessly, and essentially is essentially condemning herself to death.
Yeah.
And so, what did you think of that of the Sisterhood, or at least the leader here, Marin, realizing that maybe the Doctor was right? And that things needed to change.
I think as the story went on, she realized that more and more. When you look at her in the beginning,
right?
She's, like I said, very standoffish, and towards the end, she realizes that he's here to help. He's not here to steal our elixir.
Right.
But after he helps them defeat Morbius,
right?
she wants to take care of him and make sure he's okay. And then obviously there's the self-immolation after she goes into the fire herself.
Yeah, and she almost, for a minute there, we kind of wonder if she regenerates, because she becomes very youthful and then dissipates.
Right.
But and it's probably out there, becomes one with the Force. No, wait, that's some other franchise. Never mind. But
yeah, as a character, I very very strong female character.
Yep.
I really liked her.
All right. Any other thoughts about the Sisterhood? Anything you'd like to add, or anything else about the story you'd like to add before we move on?
Just a little trivia. I know when Tom Baker was on that was said to be burned.
Yeah.
I guess that the
Yeah,
flames actually got a little too hot, and they had to get him off of there before he caught fire.
Right.
So. And who is it? Cynthia Grenville. She's the one who said Tom jump. So but yeah, I really like him. And like I said, I'm glad they brought him back.
I don't know what it is with the Doctor Who production team. They keep wanting to set the Doctors on fire because we talked. Zan Sprouse and I talked about this on when we talked The Greatest Show in the Galaxy.
Mm-hmm.
That Sylvester McCoy was almost caught on fire because of this explosion in the circus tent.
Yeah, didn't the pieces of the back of his coat touch?
Yeah,
okay.
There's and because the heat was just so intense,
mm-hmm.
and but he just went ahead like a trooper and went on with the performance, knowing that he was on fire.
And after the podcast, I went back and rewatched it again.
Yep.
So
Well, that's good.
Anyway,
That's what we want from our listeners. Is that
it's been a long time since I watched it, so I was like, it's time.
So if nothing else, we're great excuses for going back and dusting off your DVD collection and enjoying these classic episodes.
There's nothing wrong with that at all.
All right. Anything else?
No, I think we got it.
All right. Now you said you had some great lines of the episode, so I want to. So tell me your favorite line so far.
Well, the favorite.
Well, I mean, just to, start off, and we can alternate if you want.
All right. I've got when they come into the castle and Solon looks at me and says, "Magnificent head." He says, "Well, I have had several. I used to have an old gray model. Some people liked it." Sarah says, "I did."
Yeah, that was a good one, and
I love
obviously a nice nod to John Pertwee.
Mm-hmm.
And but you always kind of got that. As much as she really liked the Fourth Doctor, she always seemed like she favored the third.
Well, they always say you always love your first Doctor.
And Sarah Jane is no exception, apparently.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, that's great. One of the lines I liked was the Doctor, upon seeing the TARDIS, when he's with the Sisterhood. And he goes, "How did you get her here, by the way?" And one of the sisters says, "The power of the Sisterhood." And the Doctor goes, "Really? But you mean you still practice teleportation? How quaint. Now, if you got yourself a decent forklift truck."
Mm-hmm. Oh, I do like that one too.
That was good. Any other lines?
When the Sisterhood teleports the Doctor out of Solon's lab,
right?
Kondo looks, is Doctor gone? And Solon says, "I could see that, you chicken brain biological disaster."
That's nice.
To this day, when I hear it, I still crack up.
That is funny. That is a good line. I liked another exchange between the Doctors and one of the Sisterhood. She goes, "You have but a little time left. Will you waste it prattling nonsense or confess your guilt?" And the Doctor goes, "What do you mean I have but a little time left?" And the sister says, "Before you die." And the Doctor replies, "But I'm only 749. Life doesn't begin until 750. And then the sister interrupts, "Yeah, at the next sun, that is agreed." And the Doctor goes, "Not by me, it isn't. I haven't even been consulted."
Mm-hmm.
I love that.
My next one is between Morbius and Solon.
Yeah.
He says, "Do you think I care about my ultimate appearance? Just to walk again, to feel, to see?" So it gives it a little bit more humanness to him.
It is very pathic. Mm-hmm. A lot of pathos in that. That you kind of get at least a little touch of sympathy for Morbius because, hey, he was a brain in a jar.
Yeah.
And, obviously anyone in that position would obviously love to have a body again. So you kind of feel for him, but obviously the way he's going about it doesn't quite work.
Mm-hmm.
I liked an exchange between the Doctor and Sarah where the Doctor goes, "You thought it was dead, didn't you?" And Sarah's like, And the Doctor replies, "You're always making that mistake."
Yep. I got one last one for you here.
All right.
When the Doctor sees the flame for the first time,
right?
He's just saying it's something spiritual to them, and he just looks and he says, "Fascinating." And the heat from the flame causes oxidation in the chemicals in the rocks, and no doubt a chemical reaction with rising superheated gases, and you have your elixir. The impossible dream of 1,000 alchemists dripping like tea from an urn.
Nice.
And they're just looking at him like, "No, this is the flame of life."
Yeah, they're not really into the whole scientific explanation. Yeah. When the Doctor and Sarah are taunting Morbius. I really like that. The doctor goes, "You can't really go on calling yourself Morbius. There's very little of Morbius left. Why don't you think of another name? Potpourri would be appropriate." And Sarah says, "Or how about Chop Suey?" The Doctor says, "Chop Suey, the Galactic Emperor."
And that comes back in the Big Finish audio, The Vengeance of Morbius.
That's right, it does.
Yeah.
There. For those that aren't aware, there was one. Big Finish brought Morbius back during Paul McGann's Eighth Doctor, and a really good two-parter.
Yeah, really good.
And also involves the Sisterhood. So, yeah, I obviously recommend checking that out. Very cool, and a very cool story. I like that one a lot. All right, you have a rating for this one?
Yeah, I'm gonna give it. I thought long about this one because, like I said, my thoughts between the first time I saw it when I was 14 and then throughout the years. I'm gonna go 8 out of 10. Flame of Life replica daggers.
Nice.
I think I'd still be cool to craft one of those.
Well, I'm going to be a little more generous than you because I really like this story. I'm going to give it 8.5 out of 10 fishbowl heads.
There you go.
With eye stalks, of course.
Yep, you have to have the eye stalks.
With the eye stalks, yes. Obviously, probably got them discounted from the Daleks, I'm guessing. Leftovers or outdated models. All right. Now I do have a reverse the polarity segment.
I've been wondering about this one. So.
And I think this one might be a little obvious, but so obviously since we're not reversing the polarity, we're reversing the polarity, and so we're going to go ahead to 2013 to The Night of the Doctor. The mini episode from 2013 written by Stephen Moffat, and you could probably already guess the connection on this one.
Yeah, I didn't know if you were going to go with the mini-sode, but...
Yep, I was going to go with the mini episode.
That's fine.
And this is probably the best mini episode, so...
Yeah.
Because if nothing else, we got the return of Paul McGann's The Eighth Doctor, finally.
And a regeneration.
Yeah, exactly, and a regeneration, so yeah, it was a big one. So during the Time War, we have the Eighth Doctor attempting to rescue a pilot named Cass, whose spaceship is crashing. And when Cass realizes that the Doctor is a Time Lord, she refuses his aid, ignoring his claims that he was never part of the Time War. The Doctor refuses to abandon Cass, and both are killed when the ship crashes on the planet Karn. Yep. So whereof, you guessed it, the Sisterhood of Karn have been expecting him. Inside a cave, the Doctor suddenly awakens with a jolt and calls out for Cass. Ohila, not Ohika, one of the sisters, explains that the Doctor died in the crash, and Cass is beyond their help. The Sisterhood restored him temporarily via the elixir of life after they recovered his body, giving him only 4 minutes to live. Ohila explains that their elixir can trigger his regeneration and help him fully return from the dead. She adds that using an elixir to trigger the regenerative process will allow the Doctor to choose which traits his next incarnation will possess rather than it be a random change. The Doctor asks why the Sisterhood would help him, recalling that the Sisterhood was never grateful of his past help, no kidding, as we just talked about. Ohila explains that the Time War threatens all reality and that the Doctor is their only hope left. So apparently they're desperate. And the Doctor resists taking part in the war, but after seeing Cass's dead body, concedes there's no need for a Doctor anymore. And asking Ohila for elixir that will turn him into a warrior, he takes the chalice and salutes the memory of his past companions, which was a great moment because we got the Big Finish audio companions of Paul McGann's Eighth Doctor actually becoming canon. So
that was nice. Yeah.
I was very happy about that. He regenerates into a new incarnation known as the War Doctor, who dons Cass's bandolier and declares himself Doctor No More. So if you enjoyed The Brain of Morbius, you will definitely enjoy The Night of the Doctor because the Sisterhood of Karn are all over that one. And like I said, the Elixir of Life, and we get a regeneration from the Eighth Doctor into the War Doctor. So pretty big stuff. So If you don't enjoy The Night of the Doctor, there's something seriously wrong with you, in my opinion.
And I'm glad that's the one that brought Big Finish to canon.
Yeah, exactly. So
just so many. He mentions all the old companions before he regenerates.
For being only like a 6-7 minute episode,
there's a lot to it.
Stephen Moffat checked a lot of boxes with that one.
No plot holes in that one.
Nope. It's nice, short, in and out, and pretty much perfect, really. All right. So we do have some listener feedback.
Great.
And we got. Let's see here. We've got. Let me get back here. All right, there we go. So first, we got Holly from Wisconsin writing in once again. Always great to hear from Holly. She goes, "Hey, Charles and John. We get more background story," and this is referring to the Brain of Morbius she's discussing, obviously. So we get more background story with some of the Time Lords and how they will do anything to survive, along with a possible way to how the Time Lords are able to possibly regenerate thanks to the flame. I think she mean, sacred fire, sacred flame. That the Sisterhood of Karn keep going. Also thought it was interesting that the outfits that the Sisterhood of Karn wear look almost exactly like the outfits that the Sibylline Sisterhood wore, which obviously is a reference to the fires of Pompeii, and an offshoot maybe, or a different sect. Now that's an interesting connection. Maybe
it is. Yeah, I never thought about that.
They do have kind of like similar eye makeup, so I won't rule that out.
Right.
What is it with some of the Time Lords wanting a whole lot of power and being able to cheat death after punishments? And she mentions Rassilon, Omega, the Master spring to mind. First time we see them, and it's not the last. I wonder if Ohila, the one who helped the 8th Doctor and talked to the 12th Doctor, isn't some relation to Ohika in the story. Well, obviously I suggested that as well. Poor Sarah Jane in this episode. Though on the other hand, not being able to see right now might not be a bad thing with that huge brain in the jar. Of course, she gets her sight back just in time to run away from that hairy shrimp-like monster. Yeah, it did have a kind of a giant prawn vibe to it, didn't it?
A little bit, yeah.
Yeah. A giant prawn with a lobster claw. So if you're in the mood for seafood, I'm just saying, Time Lord Mind Off. I guess this is referring to the mind bending. Like where the Doctor is going with it. The sacrifice to keep the light going. I didn't see coming when I first watched it. Good story, and glad that the newer series of Doctor Who, that the Sisterhood of Karn had come back and been mentioned.
Absolutely.
I'll wrap it up here. Holly from Wisconsin. So yeah,
great. That was awesome.
Thank you, Holly, and cheers for giving John a shout out in your greeting.
I appreciate it. Thank you.
I'm sure he appreciated that. Let's see here. So we also have David K. Proctor, who hasn't written us in a while. And I know that because he tells me so. So he says, I know I haven't written in a while, but I wanted you to know I am still a loyal listener. I never miss a podcast. You're awesome, David. Points for that. Points for you. However, since the wonderful world of Doctor Who is not in current production right now, I've been spending my time catching up on the gaps in my classic Doctor Who library. Nothing wrong with that. I subscribe to BritBox and am enjoying their collection. It is tough for me to break the chain that they were made in and go find one out of order to keep up with you guys for every podcast. So apparently David's a bit anal about this, but that's okay. I get it. You don't want to go out of order, and we kind of jump around all over the place. The reason we kind of do that is because if we didn't, it would be a long time before we got to some of everybody's favorite doctors. So I think kind of not knowing where you're going to end up is a very doctor-like thing to do, and it kind of helps us to be able to jump around and give everybody a chance to hear their doctor.
And I'm sure he's happy that you haven't done any Telesnap recreations either.
Exactly. So David continues, 2 of your most recent podcasts, The Girl Who Waited and Dalek, are 2 of my favorite episodes from the modern era. I am eagerly awaiting the return of the current Doctor with some new adventures, aren't we all? I really like the new Doctor. You guys and BritBox together are keeping me afloat in this void. Well, thank you, David. That's cool. Keep up the good work. I hope you find good health and return to my favorite podcast. So yeah, hopefully it won't be too long, and we'll be here, but plenty of episodes. But it's okay to kind of cheat a little bit and skip ahead too. So nobody's going to think badly of you. I know I certainly won't. But thank you for writing in, David. Always great to hear from you as well. And thanks for chiming in again. We also got another absent listener, or at least an absent commenter. Paul Beck writes in with an update. He says, "Dear Charles, I'm sorry I've not been sending any episode reviews lately. Both Linda, his wife, and I are snowed in with stuff at the moment." And he talks about his wife being his wife's business, and they're dealing with that, and work being hectic. And he goes on saying, "I've still been listening, and the shows have been awesome. The guest presenters have been great." Yeah, like John here.
Thank you.
So that is something I would like to try one day. Well, you're more than welcome to, Paul. Just drop me a line. I'm always looking for special guest companions to join me here on Next Stop Everywhere.
I thought the same thing, and then I emailed you.
At least until the new season starts. So we got a lot of time left.
Mm-hmm.
Plenty of 2019 left to work one in. Once I get all this sorted and have more free time, we'll start reviewing again. Until then, keep up the good work. My kindest regards to you, Jesse and Karen, and Holly, and all the great co-hosts, Paul. P.S. Can't believe you're coming up to the 150th episode. Great achievement! Exclamation mark! Exclamation mark! Exclamation mark! Thank you, Paul. Lovely to hear from you again. And thank you to all our listeners. So yeah, Holly, David, Paul, everybody that listens to us, we really appreciate you guys. And we're glad you're enjoying the show. We hope you keep enjoying the show. And it's great when people like John here are able to help us out. So I want to thank you, John, for helping us out.
You are very welcome.
You're welcome back anytime. Love talking to you. You're always a fountain of knowledge. A lot of stuff I don't know. So you kind of show me up, and I like that. Like I talked to you earlier before we started recording, it's the more work you do, the less I have to do, and I want to be. Right. So I get to be a little lazy.
And this is work that's fun.
Yeah, exactly. Because who doesn't enjoy talking Doctor Who, right?
That's right.
That's why we're here, and that's why hopefully everybody out there is listening to us. So if you want to be like Holly, David, Paul, and want to write in or let us know how you're doing, what you think of the show, you can drop us a line at nextstopeverywheresmg@gmail.com. That's nextstopeverywheresmg@gmail.com. And anybody that's interested in also becoming a special guest companion for an episode, you can drop me a line there, and I'll get you hooked up, just like I did John. And otherwise, you can reach us at nextstopsmg on Twitter. That's another great way to reach us. Or on Facebook at Next Stop Everywhere, the Doctor Who podcast. And that's another, plenty of ways to get a hold of us. So please do. We'd love to hear from you. And we'd love to know how you guys are doing and what you're looking forward to in the upcoming season. And so, John, where can they reach? You have anything you want to plug, like Ohio Type 40? Or
you just did it. That's
well, that was easy. All right, moving on.
There you go.
No, seriously. Yeah. Anything else?
Like I said, I don't do a whole lot of social media, but I am on Facebook. I think you had a link to my personal page,
right?
Which I'm always adding new Doctor Who friends. But yeah, we do have the Ohio Type 40, and since the last podcast that I was guest hosting on, we have gotten a few more likes, so I do appreciate that.
That's great. Yeah, please do. So yeah, Ohio Type 40, great group, and obviously heartily approved by Next Stop Everywhere. So you get the official Next Stop Everywhere Rassilon seal of approval.
Oh, you know what? I got the seal right on my arm here.
Oh, so. Nice! For those who don't know, he just showed off his ink.
Mm-hmm.
All right, hold on. I gotta get a screenshot of this. All right. There we go. Oh, hold on. There we go. Got it. All right.
Perfect.
All right. It's like hooray for print screen. So I'm gonna put that. All right, good. I got it. Awesome. All right, cool.
So I appreciate all.
Yeah, if you don't mind, I want to post that on our
no, that's
Facebook
great.
page. Yeah, that's cool. But yeah, I definitely respect the Gallifrey seal ink that you got. The seal of Rassilon.
I've got numerous ones all around my Doctor Who room there, so
Very cool. I didn't know that. Whoop, looks like my soundboard's getting a little antsy there. So, as for me, you can reach me, of course, at Charles Skaggs on Twitter, at Charles Skaggs on Instagram, Facebook at Charles Skaggs in Hilliard, Ohio. Would love to hear from you. Please like me and follow me if you're so inclined. Would definitely appreciate it. And, of course, my blog of geeky things.
Damn good coffee. And hot.
Damn good coffee and hot, where I talk about all the stuff we talk about here on Next Stop Everywhere, Doctor Who, Torchwood, Sarah Jane Adventures. We need to talk some Sarah Jane Adventures here on the podcast.
That'd be fun.
I've been wanting to do that. Jesse said he was kind of interested in some of those that feature the Doctor. So, the 10th David Tennant, Matt Smith. So maybe. But other than that, news of my other podcast that I do for Southgate Media Group here, of course. The Titan Talk, the Titans podcast they do with Jesse, where we talk about Titans TV show on DC Universe. And right now we're finishing up our review of Doom Patrol, which has been outstanding. And would be doing that. And we're talking about what we're going to do now that Doom Patrol's finishing up. So we got some plans in the works, figuring that out. And, of course, Ghostwood, the Twin Peaks podcast they do with Zan Sprouse, who was on Next Stop Everywhere here not too long ago, talking Greatest Show in the Galaxy. But there we talk, of course, Twin Peaks, just like it says on the wrapper, and David Lynch, and anything pop culture related that pops into our brains, because we're both really, really obsessed with pop culture. So please check that out.
And you know what? Since I've listened to a few episodes, I've gone back and started watching Twin Peaks from the start again. So.
Yes! Well, you need to write into Ghostwood.
There you go.
Check us out there. Yeah, that'd be great. That's good for you. Do have some quick news, Series 12 news. If you're not already aware of this, we've been kind of blasting it on our various social media, but if you're not aware of this already, or at least by the time you get to listen to this, the Jadoon are coming back to Doctor Who.
With a mohawk.
With a mohawk.
Yes.
Well, like some rhinos, they got a little Mr. T. They were a fan of Mr. T back in the day, so they're rocking the mohawk there a little bit. And
so happy they're coming back.
So for everybody all upset that there weren't enough connections to previous eras of Doctor Who, at least right now we're getting at the very least the Jadoon, probably more, I'm guessing. Now that after Jodie Whittaker's first series, but so they'll be returning. We don't know exactly the full story yet, but or the title or anything. But it's kind of nice to know that at least one creature from the classic or from the modern era will be returning, and presumably more. I'm guessing we'll see more connections than that.
I'm really hoping to hear Jodie talking Jadoon.
Wouldn't that be funny? Yeah, especially with her accent. Yeah, that would be pretty good. We know David Tennant did, so maybe Tennant, because they were both on Broadchurch, maybe he gave her some lessons. How to speak Jadoon.
That'd be fun to hear.
Boro show no Roro.
So you've got it already.
It's pretty easy. I mean, you just kind of put the O sound and everything, but almost kind of like the name game, like Banana Fanafo back in the day.
Now, if somebody says mofo, I will just lose it.
Mofo. Now that would be hilarious if they had a Jadoon saying mofo.
I gotta stop.
Oh no, mofo. That would be hilarious. All right.
Oh, that's great.
All right. So, so we've got that coming up, and so I know, and there was talk that maybe we'll get a Christmas special this year, which would be nice because last time we had heard was that Doctor Who wasn't going to be back until 2020. So that would be nice if we actually.
I'm not sure if it was just a rumor that went a little too far.
Yeah, we don't have an official announcement on that.
Yeah, it'd be great if we did.
But fingers crossed, because I'm sure a lot of people would at least. I think a Christmas special would definitely help make this long hiatus much more tolerable.
Yeah.
Like, hey, we actually have at least one episode in 2019 to look forward to.
Right.
But in the meantime, we're going to be here Next Stop Everywhere. Obviously, recording and talking previous stories. And next time on Next Step Everywhere, we're going to talk The Fires of Pompeii, which we just mentioned not too long ago.
Such a fun story.
With the Sibylline story, Sisterhood. This is a great one. Jesse's returning for this one, and obviously this one's it's back obviously during the David Tennant era. Catherine Tate as Donna Noble, and of course the debut of Peter Capaldi before he becomes, like a couple of eras before he becomes the Doctor himself.
And also Karen Gillan.
Yes. So essentially Peter Capaldi joins the club of actors that actually appeared on Doctor Who before becoming characters. So like Colin Baker, if you remember, and if you ever watched Arc of Infinity, he was on
Maxwell.
Yep, Maxwell, and he obviously went on to become the Sixth Doctor, and so yep, and Bernard Cribbins, who was actually in the Peter Cushing Daleks and Invasion of Earth 2150 AD.
Right.
He ended up becoming Wilf, of course, so he's got a little bit of a tie there.
Yep.
And lots of great. Oh, and of course, I'm blanking the actor's name, who played Twice Upon a Time, David Bradley. David Bradley, who was in the Matt Smith era story.
Dinosaurs on a Spaceship.
Dinosaurs on a Spaceship. Thank you.
Yeah.
It's been a long day. I've been up since 5:45, so I'm dragging a bit. But obviously he went on to become the Doctor himself in Twice Upon a Time. So very cool. All right. So we'll be talking about that. Fires of Pompeii. That's going to be a lot of fun and a great story. John, thank you again. We love having you on the podcast. You bring a lot of knowledge, and hopefully you felt more comfortable this time than you did your first outing.
Well, I hope it sounds like it.
You sound like
I had a great time.
I think you sound more relaxed than you did the first time. I mean,
Well,
I thought you were. I thought you
and-
were fine the first time, but this time you seem more relaxed.
Sounds good.
So-
And best wishes to both Jesse and Karen.
Yep. Yeah. Karen, we obviously miss, but she's still helping us out behind the scenes with getting the episodes out to everybody. So much appreciated there. And Jesse, like I said, we'll be back next week. So you get to hear his dulcet tones once again.
There you go.
All right. So everybody, thank you again for listening to Next Stop Everywhere. And we'll see you next time for the Fires of Pompeii. It's going to be a good one right here on Next Stop Everywhere, the Doctor Who podcast. Goodbye, everybody.
Take care.